Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams, the Saints, LSU, Tulane, touch on some Pels, and of course, to break it down for us live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios, none other than Jude Young, voice of the UNO Privateers, of course, CrestCitySports.com, and Nash 106.1 FM, all access. Jude, welcome to the show. Good to have you back, my friend. And before we get started, tell us a little bit about what's going on. Your show, there's a brand new show that we have over at 106.1 as well. And of course, everything that's going on over at CrestCitySports.com.
Well, we're very fortunate to have the best lead-in show on local radio
Thank
with
you, my friend.
Inside New Orleans with this gentleman here from 4 to 6, and then either Ken Trahan or I are on with more sports talk from 6 to 7 with All Access. My normal night is Tuesday nights. I fill in other nights, and we're happy to say that this week we debuted a live Wednesday night show from the Treasure Chest Casino, so that'll be an ongoing venture to branch out a little bit more to the community and bring our product to them. Obviously, Ken Trahan and I are the owners of CrescentCitySports.com. That's our main gig. It keeps us awfully busy, and we're covering the entire spectrum of sports. If you follow us already, you know. If not, look at us on social media, CCS Daily or CCS Prep for our high school specific coverage. And I'm also the voice of the UNO Privateers basketball team. And while we sit here with this weather every day, they're over with Tulane men's basketball as well in Costa Rica.
Really?
So they're getting some extra games in and practice time in and having a blast on the beach when they're not doing that. So I'm pretty jealous.
Yeah, I have to say, what are you doing here?
I wasn't invited.
I mean, what are you doing here? Come on, man. That should be part of the deal. Come on. You guys are entrenched in prep. Nobody does it better. Talk about the upcoming prep season.
Well, we are going to once again on 106.1 FM have Ken Trahan's original prep football report, and yours truly along with Les East will have the countdown to the original at Francesca by Katie's over in Lakeview, a high school specific night where the head coach, other administrators, players, band, cheerleaders, you name it, will be in the house. It's a great time with great food and drink, and it carries through the evening, and our show with Ken Trahan goes all the way to 11 o'clock in the evening, covering high school sports across the state. We have dozens of reporters at the games to let you know what's happening, how it happened, interviews after the fact, so that's exciting. We have high school football team previews on Crescent City Sports, getting in touch with the coaches to find out what they have ready to rock and roll, and we're just a few weeks away now as well, and we'll have live games streaming on Crescent City Sports every week, usually multiple games a week, along with a select package that Ken will be announcing with Cumulus on 106.1 for our radio coverage of high school sports live as well.
Beautiful. Going to be really, really busy coming up. No doubt about it. Well, Saints are in practice 14 ended today. Injuries have started to crop up just a bit. Well, obviously the main one everybody's talking about is Jameis Winston with the foot sprain. I didn't anticipate him playing against Houston this weekend anyway. They're holding him out. To me, again, the interesting thing I will see is what will happen next week against Green Bay.
Right.
They have joint practices on Tuesday and Wednesday. They play on Saturday, I believe. Of course, that's always the best work you can get when you're talking about from the veteran standpoint, going up against a team that is expected to vie for the NFC crown. Will he be available for that? In his absence, Andy Dalton has been terrific, and I think a lot of people that really were paying attention to the pickup of Andy Dalton anticipated him being able to step in if there was an issue with the Jameis Winston in terms of injury, or again if he struggled, because again a veteran quarterback who's been there and done that. Talk a little bit about Jameis Winston, how he's looked in camp, his injury, and then kind of, if you would, morph into Andy Dalton and what you've seen thus far.
Well, what we saw from Winston before the foot issue was he was coming along well. Observers felt that way. Dennis Allen, as the head coach, who seems to be much more open and honest than Sean Payton was, felt that way as well. But now you have an issue where he's missing valuable time coming off a major knee injury to be able to work with receivers that are going to be his main targets that he hasn't worked with before until this offseason. When you look at a rookie in Chris Olave, Michael Thomas coming back healthy so far is huge. He's looked great, along with Jarvis Landry. So he's missing that time, and Dalton has an opportunity to take advantage of it. But at the same time, there's a reason why Dalton is here. The Saints had to be concerned about how Winston would bounce back from the injury. And when you do have an injury that you're favoring in some way, that does open the door for other things to happen. And it sounds like it was a non-contact injury that happened for Winston with the foot. We think it's just day-to-day because we're trusting Dennis Allen at this point, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you don't see Winston on the field at all until preparations leading up to the final of the 3 preseason games. As much as you'd like him out there in the practices and the game against Green Bay next week, I think they have to really err on the side of caution, make sure the foot is okay at 100%, because again, he's planning to play with this brace. It's a different deal for somebody who's used to having that mobility, and it's clearly going to be limited. No matter what he's saying, he's not going to be quite the same athletic player in the pocket as long as he's dealing with that issue.
Right, and it looks like the brace is going to be on for the foreseeable future. So that's going to be an interesting situation. But, again, Dalton and the way he's handled the offense, his ability to be able to read defenses, again, to be able to grasp that offense quickly, you got to feel good if you're a Saints fan because, again, this is a guy that's won a lot of games in this league.
If you like the way the offense was run under Drew Brees, well, Andy Dalton's much more likely to run it that way. Short, intermediate passer, makes quick decisions. He's accurate. And the thing about it, when we talk about accuracy, you want to know the difference between a quarterback like Dalton and an all-timer like Brees versus Winston. Those guys can throw to spots. They're timing passers, and once they understand who they're working with, if those guys are running the routes properly, they're going to be out of their breaks and the ball's going to hit them in stride, in motion. Whereas Winston, that's still a work in progress with him, although he showed some signs of progress with that last year. He's not quite on that level. Dalton can step in and play well, and I think he's going to look a lot better than he did when he had to step in for Dak Prescott when he was with the Cowboys, because I don't think that offensive style fit him very well. Although they used the tight end a lot in the short passing game, they were more intermediate in trying to stretch the field off of play action with their potent running game. That's really not Dalton. At the same time, we're talking so nicely about Dalton. There's a reason why Winston is so valuable, and that ability to throw the ball deep down the field, to loosen up defenses, to keep them on honest against the run and not bringing up extra defenders, and to get cheap points.
Yeah.
The difference in the NFL between good offenses and great offenses is how many explosive plays can you come up with. Winston has the ability to be elite in that category. The Saints do need that, and they would clearly miss it if Dalton had to play serious minutes.
And that's the difference between the early Saints offenses with Drew Brees and the Drew Brees offenses, again, toward the end of his career. I mean, you can remember shock and awe.
Right.
I mean, at any point, they could score from anywhere on the field. And they got to the end of his career where it was dink and dunk. You had to use the running game to be able to move down the field. So a little bit different there. And as far as Winston goes, I agree with you. He has had such a strong arm his entire life that he feels like, again, I could be a little bit late, but I got the arm to be able to fit it in. Now, that gets you in trouble in the NFL,
no
right?
doubt.
Now, but it'd be interesting to see again. Last year, I felt like he wasn't willing to be able to throw the ball in tight windows with the receiving core he had. But with the receiving core he has now, there's no excuse not to throw it into tight windows because those guys have the ability to go get the football or, again, to protect themselves and to be able to almost, box out and get the ball.
And you're hoping those windows won't be quite as tight because of the respect the defenses are going to have to pay to a guy like Thomas, where if you're too physical with him, he can beat you that way and create even more separation. And he's showing that in camp as he's getting more into 11-on-11 drills against a very good secondary that's as good as any in the league. So you know it's legit. And the same can be said for Jarvis Landry. That's how he makes his living. And with an Olave and to a lesser extent Deontay Hardy, those guys are big separation guys. So you need to trust that you can lead them into space, and defenses need to give them that space. And I think Winston was showing signs of being able to do that under the worst circumstances with a terrible receiving core last year, and it's a shame he won't be able to have the preparation you'd like to see to be able to work with all these new weapons.
No, hopefully, again, he'll get back soon. To your point about the wide receiving core, so much better. And then you look at the depth chart now, and Callaway, who was the #1 receiver last year, he might have a tough time making this team at this point.
Yeah. And
Hardy and Traquan Smith, who, again, like I said yesterday, is like a New Orleans cockroach. You can't get rid of him. I mean, it's amazing. But again, he's a guy that can block downfield, which again is something they want from their receivers. Be interested to see what happens. They got a couple of New Orleans kids, and Merritt and Dixon, who again are trying to get on that practice squad. I mean, is there a room for Callaway? And again, to me, look, when the Saints make their final cut, they're going to have some good football players that are going to end up on other teams. And Callaway may be one of those guys. He may be one of those casualties.
We've seen the Saints be very creative with how they can get young guys to slip through the cracks, whether if they have a nagging injury, you put them on IR. You keep them when the first 53-man roster comes out, wait a few days closer to first game day, and then you cut them when other teams have already set their rosters and their practice squad. They may do something like that creative at the wide receiver spot, because you mentioned Dixon out of Edna-Carr and Nichols. I think he's an NFL receiver. And Kirk Merritt seems to be emerging, who's one of the better all-around athletes on the football field this area has ever produced, and he's showing it in camp. So he's another guy that you might want to see. How can we finagle this to have them around? Because next year probably Traquan Smith isn't here, and as you mentioned, as good as Callaway looked at times as the main guy with nobody else around him, there's a lot more talent and more talented players than him in camp now.
It's interesting to see how they use Hardy. It really is, because again, his slight stature. How much can you utilize him? To me, he's a guy that could, you could slip him out, get him open deep, but not a guy that maybe you want to use a lot around the line of scrimmage, where you're getting linebackers on him, in terms of tackling. But interested to see again how they're going to utilize him. Because the Saints really had a smallish receiver like him with that type of speed in the past?
Well, not in the recent past. I mean, and when you have those guys, they tend to be return guys, like going all the way back to Michael Lewis, who saw some snaps. They'd work him on end arounds. They'd use him to stretch the field. And we saw a little bit of that last year. Of course, you remember the deep bomb against Washington from Winston to Hardy. And they'll do the same thing. He may not see more than 15 snaps a game, if that on average, but the defense will have to account for him. He can be a great decoy or a playmaker. And
a lot of that is incumbent again on the tight end position as well, where Troutman has had a really good camp. They obviously like what Taysom Hill has done. Vanette is starting to come on now. You've seen a list, Juwan Johnson is going to kind of faded now because of the injury. Your thoughts on the tight end position? Has Troutman taken that next step, or is it too early to tell?
No, it's way too early to tell. We need to see it in games, because he's been a pretty good practice player, and he showed showed it in games as a rookie, but last year, until the very end when he got hurt, he looked like a player who lacked confidence in his ability to catch the football, his ability to block, even though he had already proven himself to be a pretty good blocker. So it was the classic sophomore slump. Once we see live bullets flying against other defenses, then we'll have a better idea. And if he's not the guy, then yeah, the Saints are going to probably play a lot of 3 tight end sets. They're going to use a Taysom Hill with his hybrid ability more to get their best personnel on the field, because when Van Nett's out there, you know he's blocking, and they really need, as a complete tight end, Troutman to be the guy, or they're not going to have one.
Right. Mark Ingram has had a really good camp. Some are saying, again, he's, even though, again, he's on the other side of 30, he's looking good. Hopefully that can be something he can sustain. Remember, the Saints, is it 14 games before they have their first bye?
Right.
Okay, so I mean, it's like a full old NFL season before they have their first bye. And then, of course, Kamara, the only thing you worry about Kamara is with the off-the-field issues. But again, it's the third running back that really we're looking at right now. Is it going to be Smith? Is it going to be Azebo? Is it going to be Jones? Or will it be Washington? Your thoughts?
Well, a fine member of your staff said when he was at practice, Abram Smith was on every special teams unit. And as soon as he signed, knowing his background at Baylor, didn't get a chance to start at running back until his final year, shined doing so, but before that was even used on defense and averaged 11 tackles a game for 4 games at the end of his junior year. So it's a perfect fit for the third running back, because if the Saints running back is going to be third string, he's going to play special teams. And if you're Drain Washington, you got to feel like if Smith stays healthy, your days are numbered.
Right. Offensive line, your thoughts? Penning, Hurst. A lot of observers feel like Penning has really come on the last week or so. Again, after all the fights and stuff the week before, Hurst is a pro that can play multiple positions for them. Nick Martin has come on now as a guy that again might make the final roster. Your thoughts on the offensive line?
Well, the latter. Martin was a great signing because he's proven as somebody capable of playing the center position and on the interior of the line. He's got the skins on the wall. So if he's looking good and healthy, that makes you feel a whole lot better about the weakest part, I think, even more so than tight end on the whole offense, is what do you do if your starters get hurt? And we already know that Cesar Ruiz at right guard continues to be a question mark, and Andrus Peat on the left side, he can't stay healthy. So Martin emerging is good. If Penning can play early and be the left tackle, that allows you to then be able to use Hurst to be that 6th man, because he can play guard, and he would be your best option to do so, but you can't do it until Penning's ready. So every bit of progress he makes towards opening day is good news for the Saints, because they really need that scenario to play out where their second first-round pick is ready to roll.
That's a guy that's going to get a lot of playing time in the preseason to see again how he stacks up against other NFL teams. And of course, when you look across the board at this offense, you got to like they got the weapons. Obviously, the quarterback situation with whether it's going to be Winston or Dalton, you have to feel good about that. The question is the offensive line. When you've got a great coach like you have right now, you've had Jari Evans and Zach Strief. Zach Strief again part of that staff now. You got to feel pretty good about at least those guys, the tutorial that those guys are getting. And if Cesar Ruiz, I said this last week on this program and the radio show, if with all the hands that are now helping Cesar Ruiz out, if he's not going to get it with those guys helping him, he's talking about Strief and Jari Evans, well, he's not going to get it.
Right. And it was clear that was what Dennis Allen was thinking, because you look at him being promoted to the head coach, and a lot of the rest of the coaches stayed in place and on staff. Where the changes were made, those are the eye-opening ones. And bringing in Doug Marrone to be the offensive line coach, bringing in former Saints who know how it's done to try to fix some problems here, knowing you've got a young first-round pick, knowing you've got another former first-round pick who's struggling in Ruiz, it makes a lot of sense that they're paying extra attention to maybe we need to do more in development here. If Ruiz doesn't get the job done this time around, then the Saints are obviously moving on, and you're not hearing enough good things in practice to get you excited quite yet. If he works well within the unit, when you get to the regular season, then that's going to be great news, but I think the Saints are seriously concerned.
Let's talk defense. First of all, the defensive line looks really strong if everyone is healthy. Now, that's a big if. Peyton Turner coming off of an injury now. Davenport finally getting into the mix. Granderson has played really well during camp. And of course, we know, you look at Cam Jordan, he's a mainstay. On the inside, obviously got Onyemata, Street, Roach, Shai Tuttle. Those are your four there. They're pretty much set across the board when you talk about the defensive line. Your thoughts?
And because of the versatility of the way they draft at defensive end,
I miss passing you as well.
Passing on somebody else who they love these 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" guys who once they get into the building, they get up toward 300 pounds, so they can play off the edge, use their length and quickness off the ball, but you can move them inside as well, and not just doing so on obvious passing situations. Passamoir in general, coming over from the Chiefs last year until he got banged up, did a nice job there. But notice I said banged up. All those guys, when you look at Davenport, Turner, and Passamoir, have the build in common, but also it seems the nagging injury history. So fortunately, you have enough of them that you can rotate them in and out based on when they're healthy. And you should have enough of a rotation to keep those guys fresh and continue to do what this defense does really well. They don't do such a great job of being a defense that shoots the gaps up front in the trenches, but they just collapse the pocket as a unit because they have guys who have that similar skill set, and they get offensive lines on their heels, and that's how they generate the kind of pressure that makes them successful.
Big question is linebacker. And again, we discussed last year the wide receiver room, and I compare it a lot to that, okay, when you start looking at what's going on there, because you had an opportunity to be able to go out and to bring Quan Alexander back. $1.2 million, $152,000 investment. Okay, that's it, his signing bonus. That was the roll of the dice, $152,000. You've got a situation now where Pete Werner is still dealing with the groin injury. They brought in Hansen, they brought in Schobert, they brought in Kiko Alonso. They obviously got Eric Wilson, who came over from Houston there. Zach Bond, they're still trying to figure out again what they're going to do with him. You got Ellis there. You got a bunch of guys, but you don't have a guy, okay? And I just don't understand the hesitation in bringing a guy that wanted to be here, that played well for you, that was a good locker room guy, that also was a guy that fired up your defense, even if he wasn't going to be a starter. I mean, if you told him, look, we want to start Pete Werner, I get it. Compete. Isn't that what you do? You compete. So, I mean, again, I'm still blown away. And now it's put them in a position now where they're probably going to have to go out and either pick up a cast-off at the last cut or trade for a linebacker now.
Well, let's look at the situation first off. The importance of linebacker based on how many snaps they play together on the field. You're almost always going to have two linebackers on the field, but the Saints have enough talent and versatility at defensive back. Nick Underhill made a great point on a panel I was on last night that they may play more dime. You get your best personnel on the field, but that only helps you a little bit with a problem if you don't have depth. Right now, if healthy, they have two proven starting linebackers who would play 99% of the snaps. Demario Davis is an all-pro, and if Werner plays just a little bit better than he played as a rookie, you got a guy that was a steal late in the second round. But now he's dealing with a groin injury that's taken him out of practice for the second time. After that, other than Eric Wilson, there's no real starting experience there, and he's had an issue with injuries and perhaps some consistency. I don't think Quan Alexander, unless they really overpaid him, was going to come back here. I think the Jets were always going to win. The Saints, because it was a comfortable deal where he had been, might have made him take a little longer to make that decision. But before Werner's injury, had a much better chance to start signing with the Jets. I think you would have lost that anyway, and the timing just didn't work out. It's a shame the Werner issue didn't happen a little sooner so that you could have addressed it that way and maybe convinced Quan to come aboard. And you would have liked to have had that third guy that you know can step in and play either spot. They don't have it, and they may have to address it when cuts happen later on in the preseason or even to work a deal. But when you look for a veteran linebacker who's okay, there are probably some teams out there that have surplus that you could work with, or will just put a guy on the street for you. It's still not great, because if you lose Demario Davis, as good as your defense has the potential to be, the drop-off is going to be severe.
Huge. And again, that's he's been an Iron Man. He's been an Iron Man. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The fact that they've had to, bring Saints retreads in just to be able to do practice right now shows you, again, that was an oversight, okay?
Right. They've been good in the draft in recent years, but Bond was part of that Ruiz draft that just hasn't worked out so far in Troutman. Bond not working out is a killer because they were trying to take a guy who had more 3-4 outside linebacker skills and convert him to be more of a three-man who could play either inside or weak side. He's been hurt. He could return to practice apparently today. He's running out of time. At this point, how can you expect him to even make the roster if they don't trust him, considering the investment of the pick and the opportunity that's standing right in front of him?
Well, that was the problem with the draft. I mean, you went in with Cesar Ruiz, you moved him from center to guard. You take Bond, who was really a pass rusher, and try to make him a guy that can play in space. And again, that's where mistakes happen. When you're projecting guys, especially, and ultimately they don't have the skill set to get it done.
Right.
The jury's out on Cesar Ruiz, whether he can do that consistently at the guard position. I think Bond's going to end up with another team and going to flourish. Somebody's going to put him in a position where he's just rushing the passer, and we're going to find out, wow, that guy can rush the passer.
It could be a Rob Nikovich situation
no doubt.
if he winds up with a team like Pittsburgh, for example.
No, I'm telling you, it really looks that way. The defensive backfield is stacked. Now, you worried a little bit about Lattimore with his injury, but again, I think they're just cautious there. They're not really, he's gonna be ready for week 1. But again, across the board, there is great depth and great skill.
And they've drafted so well there at identifying what they're looking for. The length and athleticism and the ability to be physical at corner was clearly important, and it's starting to pay off with Paulson Adebo being the absolute #1 star of camp.
No doubt.
And with Lattimore missing time, that just means more targets coming his way and more ability to show off just how good he's got the potential to be in his second year. Alontae Taylor, he fits that mold as well, but he may not even see the field because Bradley Roby should. I can't believe the Saints were able to re-sign the guy because he could start for half the teams in the league easily. And what you like about him is the Saints are comfortable with his ability to move into the slot, so that gives you security with C.J. Gardner-Johnson either from injury or if he decides that contract negotiations aren't going his way and were to walk out of camp. So that kind of depth is an absolute blessing that they have, and it's all because overall they are able to fill those 2 holes at safety with guys that I think fit the more modern way to play, because Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu can both play any role in the secondary. The Saints were much more defined last year, having Marcus Williams as a true free safety and an older Malcolm Jenkins having to play more of the strong safety role. Saints don't have to do that now, and that just makes their defense pre-snap harder for quarterbacks to figure out because those safeties can play anywhere. You're going to have a guy like Mathieu who, just like Gardner-Johnson, can cover. Gardner-Johnson can drop back more. They both can blitz. The chess game that the defense can play against offenses because of that versatility, it's going to look even better than we've seen in the past.
I agree 100%. I think there's an upgrade at the safety position. We'll see how Taylor kind of fits in down the line here, but that secondary, if they could stay healthy, that's, to me, again, everybody talks about the defensive line, and I agree. They're stout, but that is the jewel of the defense when you look at the back end. An interesting deal that NFL teams have been dealing with now for a while, especially since the collective bargaining agreement has changed. There were 2-a-days at one time. You had pads on, you hit. Now it is very much almost flag football when you're looking at practice, not going to the ground. Big problem, and I talked about this the other day on the radio show. How do you harden your body for the regular season with 3 preseason games, and again, not in a situation where you're getting a lot of contact within practice? Now, again, I understand you don't want to get your players hurt going in before the regular season, but at some point you got to get that body hard. That's, I think, why we've seen so many injuries across the board in the first quarter of the NFL seasons now, because it takes the guys a while to ramp up and to be able to handle those collisions on a week-in, week-out basis. This week is going to be interesting because, again, you got Green Bay, and this is going to be probably your biggest test of the season in terms of that practice sessions, 2 practice sessions, and then having the ability to be able to play them. What are your thoughts on the hardening of your body situation, and what do you anticipate next week in Green Bay?
Well, we know the Saints made changes behind the scenes and going over to Alabama to make a hire to deal with maybe being even more modern with strength and conditioning. It's important to understand that you aren't going to have the old school way of trial by fire in practice with all the hitting. So you've got to figure out to avoid, which is the major issue. You're hearing more about these soft tissue injuries, ligament issues, things that happen with knees that can happen at any time. More than half the time they're non-contact, they're unpredictable. But it's the soft tissue injuries that are an issue. So it's preparing your body throughout the course of a year in order to be able to hold up when you're asking the maximum out of it when you go into the regular season. They're trying to do that, but that's just something that is an evolution when you talk about strength and conditioning, as well as trainers understanding how to prepare the body before and after practice. It's way too complicated for us to get into, but it's learning on the run as less practice time is dedicated to the physical, and it's more the mental side of the game and the technique side of the game, which we talk about a guy like Penning, for example. I don't think he needs so much hitting. I think he needs the one-on-one work that has to do with footwork, hand placement, just like the scouting report said. So playing a bunch of 11-on-11 for him probably isn't that important as long as he's getting the film study, which is so much more modern and useful than it used to be. Guys understand their assignments going out there, and they're able to be shown on a screen and in the palm of their hands with a tablet what they need to know and what they have to be able to do in a certain situation against a certain front. It comes down to the technique of the game that's more important, and doing it the way that your coaching staff wants it done to fit into your particular scheme. The Saints know what they're doing, and they tend to be ready to play in the regular season physically. I don't know about mentally. Sometimes that was a problem under Sean Payton in the past, but not last year, because they were challenged more by the Packers game and folks thinking they weren't going to be good. They're going to be challenged more because folks don't believe the Saints are a Super Bowl contender, and I think they're going to be ready to play Week 1 against Atlanta at their best to prove that Dennis Allen was a good hire, because he seems to be a player's coach. There's a lot to like there. But to the injury part, I don't think that issue is ever going to go away, because until you get into October, when your body's worn down a little bit, but you're used to the regular season routine, you can't simulate it.
How about Green Bay next week?
I think those practices are going to be so much more important in the game, obviously, to evaluate players and the depth and the youth at certain position, whether it's Abram Smith or these other running backs behind Ingram and Kamara, for example. Do you have depth on the offensive line? Will Nick Martin continue to play well on the interior? They like what they have at tackle, obviously. Those snaps are going to be vital, getting a look at different people and different styles of pass rushers for Penning. And on the defensive side of the ball, even though Devontae Adams may be as good as it gets in the league at wide receiver, and he's not there anymore, you're going to be challenged by Aaron Rodgers in those practices, whereas in the game he probably doesn't play very much. So the reports we get out of those practices will tell us how much of the reports when the Saints are going against each other are actually real. I have a hunch the defense is going to hold up pretty well, though. The offense is the question.
I'm interested to see again how they play this preseason with their veterans and their starters. I don't anticipate seeing hardly anybody against Houston on Saturday. How much work they get in, good work they get in against Green Bay, I think will be the tail of the tape of how much we see those guys play against Green Bay in that second game.
And even then, maybe not, and it comes down to the third game where you probably see your starters for a whole half. Those two practices, first half of the final preseason game, that'll be where you see the veterans.
Yeah, I agree. Is this a playoff team?
I think so. Think about last year. If Will Lutz plays. 17 games, they're a playoff team alone, much less the injuries at quarterback and everywhere else. I think they have filled the holes, the biggest holes, night and day at wide receiver talent-wise, having two veteran quarterbacks who you can really believe in, that you can go in the battle and win games, and the fact that they have continued to revitalize the defensive front and the secondary with more and more talent that can step in and play. It's your ability to handle those injuries that are key. And outside of real concerns at linebacker depth and interior offensive line, until we see it more frequently, this is a pretty complete team. So yeah, double-digit wins gets you in the playoffs, and they should get there.
He's Jude Young of CrestCitySports.com, 106.1 FM All Access, and of course the voice of the UNO Privateers. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll hear from our underwriters. We'll come back. We'll take on the collegiate game. We'll talk some Tulane. We'll talk some LSU. If we have time, we'll get into the Pelicans as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stick around, won't you?
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com. All access on 106.1 FM, and also the voice of the UNO Privateers is our guest. Let's talk LSU. I found it funny, but you know, it is what it is. A lot of people are freaking out over the fact that Kelly and his coaching staff are cross-training players. And I said this on the radio show the other day. Look, Kelly and his staff, for the majority of them, just got there. Again, they've seen these guys in off-season workouts. They're in fall camp now. They got to see with their own eyes what these guys look like. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you hear there's unrest on the offensive line because they're trying players at multiple positions, other parts of the team, I would say, please don't freak out about it. Let these guys evaluate what they have in terms of talent. They may see something the other staff did not see in a player that may set them up, you know, again, in a position where they can have great success. To me, this is a foundation year for the LSU Tigers. They have to be in you look at this is a foundation for the next 10 years, in my opinion. So I would not, you know, jump on every single, you know, story that's out there about, oh, they're doing this or doing that, and allow them to do what they need to do to prepare this team for the upcoming season, but more importantly, again, for the upcoming season and beyond. Right. Because they're putting their system in, their culture in. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now? I mean, I like what they're doing. I like the fact they're cross-training these players, trying to see them at different positions.
Right, you mentioned it, the idea of evaluation, because you come in the door and by the end of spring, and you've brought in a couple of transfers from other schools that were highly regarded that played tackle, and right now you have them playing at the guard spots. Right. The only player who had a set position is a true freshman who was an early entry guy in Will Campbell, who's going to be their left tackle. That tells you they don't want to do this, but they're basically saying we don't really know what we have with these other guys, so we want them to be able to fill in anywhere. So at any given time when injuries hit, after we pick a first and second team on the depth chart, when we nail that down, which will be in the next couple weeks, we want to know who can step in where so we can still have the 5 best available players on the field. This LSU team has struggled on the offensive line for many years now. Even in 2019, it was covered up by the brilliance of Joe Burrow. They won awards for being a great offensive line because Joe Burrow and the skill talent made them look great when they weren't. Yes, they've sent some players to the NFL, but being solid across the board, no, they haven't been. And that's been a strength of Kelly and his stop, Cincinnati particularly, at Notre Dame, and I'm sure it'll be a strength at LSU because he's got the national contacts. How do we know that? Because he got into the game late where LSU had lost a lot of ground with in-state talent. And they needed to replenish what is a good defensive line right now, but will need that next wave. So what did they do? They used their national contacts, guys they were recruiting at Notre Dame, because they didn't have the contacts established here, and those players had been neglected or didn't like the previous staff and were making other decisions. So all they do is they get a commitment from the best lineman in Baltimore, the best lineman in Minneapolis, you know, the best tight end in St. Louis. I'm not naming their names, I'm just telling you where they're from because that's all that matters. They're getting top 250 talent. And they've got, what, the 7th or 8th rated recruiting class right now, and they may easily finish in the top 5 if they finish strong because they are gaining ground with the remaining in-state talent. May even flip a guy or two who are starting to realize that LSU is a stable place again. offensive line is an area that's going to be a long-term fix.
Right.
They want to bring in guys from high school and not transfers,
Sure.
and to have them be able to sit a year and then step in, unlike what Campbell's going to do. So for the short term, they do have enough pieces that they're going to be, I think, better on the offensive line than we've at least seen in the last couple of years, because they coach it well, they scheme it well, and there's enough parts that they're going to know how they fit together best as soon as an injury happens. Well, what do we have to do here? We're not just going to plug the next guy in that spot. If we can move a guy over from guard to tackle or vice versa, or to center,
to get our best five on the field.
The best five on the field. They're going to be ready for it because they will have cross-trained, and LSU's offense will be more consistent as a result, although not ideal, and we'll get into some of the reasons why.
Talk about the quarterback position. What do you think will happen? Now, again, today, first scrimmage today, Nussmeier did not participate because of an ankle injury. A lot of people believe it's a 3-horse race with, again, Howard is going to redshirt. Who do you think will be the quarterback for the LSU Tigers?
Jaden Daniels, I think, is already the choice in the minds of Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, and the main decision maker, of course, in Brian Kelly. And the reasons are pretty clear to me now. Again, I mentioned I was on a panel last night. Everybody else on that panel thought it was going to be Miles Brennan. Everything I'm hearing is he's third string, and probably, if that's the case, won't be on the roster. It'll be on somebody else's to try to finish off his career and actually find a place to play. And the reason is simple. Garrett Nussmeier, even if he didn't get banged up this week, isn't ready yet to be trusted when you need stability going into game one. If LSU had 4 cupcakes in a row lined up in September, that would be fine. But they're playing a showcase weekend game against a Florida State that's desperate to start the season off right in game one. Your conference opener's week 3 against a Mississippi State team that's loaded defensively and runs that air raid and can put up points. You've got to have the combination of experience and stability at quarterback. And oh, by the way, we just talked about the offensive line. There's a reason why they brought in Daniels from Arizona State. He's got 3 years of starting experience, and he's shown his ability to at times be really good throwing the ball, but also he's mobile. He can do things when plays break down. He also gives you the ability to run zone read, to run different looks as far as getting him on the edge to use his legs. And I think this offense needs as many of those potential strengths as possible, and only Daniels brings that to the table. I'm going as far to say if he doesn't get hurt between now and opening night Sunday on Labor Day weekend, that Daniels will take the first snap.
What about the running back position?
Running back position, I think everything we're hearing is that John Emery's kind of reached last chance saloon. He's had issues off the field. He's had consistency issues, ball security issues on the field, but he was a 5-star recruit for a reason. He has the talent. It looks like he's buckled down and is one of those guys that I think will benefit most from the Kelly regime. And as I've put it, there's an adult in the room now running this program, and guys like Emery needed that. He's got NFL talent. He's going to get, if he's healthy, the main bulk of the snaps. But another transfer, Noah Cain from Penn State, looks like he's finally healthy. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He can block. Okay, he's a reliable, smart player. So that ability plus the north-south, get the yards that's there type that you need when you look at an offensive line that you're not 100% sure of. That Ty Davis Price got the most snaps and carries last year because he brought that to the table. I think Emery and Cain probably see a large lion's share of the snaps, and they should do well.
Wide receiver core could be one of the best in the SEC, if not the country.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get all those guys on the field and keep everybody happy. Keyshawn Butte is maybe the best receiver in the country. And what Jack Besh brings to the table, as soon as he was brought to SEC Media Days as one of the 3 key guys, you knew that he was going to play a prominent role. A team that, if the coaches had their way, they would have a stock tight end room. And we saw in the past at Notre Dame what Denbrock did as an offensive coordinator at Cincinnati. They like to throw to the tight end. Tight end position is bare. So you need somebody at the receiver spot to work the middle of the field. And Besh is the guy who's best suited to be able to get those tough catches in traffic over the middle. And he will do that. And then the explosiveness of everybody else, starting with Jeray Jenkins. I think he's criminally underrated. He can do it at all 3 levels. They've got 4- and 5-star talent behind them. LSU can withstand injuries at receiver and still be potent there. And they're going to have to throw the ball, I think, more than Kelly would like. But at least they have the weapons to do it.
Defensively, where's the strength of this team?
It's got to be the defensive line. But I think Mason Smith, everybody's just over the moon about how good he can be to wreak havoc in the middle of the line. He could wind up shocking us and being a top 10 pick when it's all said and done. And they've got plenty of other players who can make it happen there as well with their edge talent, B.J. Ojulari in particular. All he's got to do is stay healthy, and he brings you that special sort of pass rush off the edge that teams have to scheme to deal with. And I think LSU's too deep across their front, whether they're going with 3 or 4 down linemen. It doesn't matter. They're not going to have a base defense. They're going to scheme based on their opponent and who they put on the field. And they're always going to have at least 4 guys up front who are dangerous, who can crash the pocket, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And I think they're pretty good at linebacker. I worry about the depth at cornerback, though. So by far, the defensive line's the one area where it needs to be for an SEC team.
Are the corners SEC caliber?
The starting corners, I think they are. We haven't heard a lot about Sevyn Banks, the Ohio State transfer, but when he's been healthy, he's proven to be an elite level college football player. And it would be nice if he's ready to rock and roll, because Garner, the transfer from ULL, I don't know. There are questions about his speed, and do you have to cheat safeties his way over the top to protect him? Because physically, his ability to break on the ball in front of him, really good, but you don't want somebody with a liability down the field. I think for sure that Bernard Converse is an SEC caliber. I think he's an NFL cornerback of the future. You get him to come back home out of Oklahoma State. He's out of Shreveport originally. He can play, and high IQ guy too. So even though he missed and wasn't available to be on the field in the spring, he's going to be up to speed. And you got 2 guys from Arkansas who are from here transferring, and you know that they can hold up in the battles. I think they're going to be very good.
How good can the linebacking core be?
I think it comes along the lines of how good the young linebackers, in particular Penn, who at this point appears to be a starter, how well he can play. Jones is clearly going to be on the field, and he should have been more under the previous regime coming out of Clemson as a transfer. It's really confusing to me because his range and his ability to stay on the field against the passing game, it was a huge strength. You knew that coming in. I don't think they utilized that well enough. I think they're pretty good there, and getting Harold Perkins as the 5-star linebacker to commit, he's going to be able to see the field. And I think by midway through the season, if he were a starter, no one would be surprised.
LSU seems they got NIL together. A lot of that, again, had to do with the laws that were passed in the legislature signed by the governor recently. You see that now. And you see that now in the recruiting class of 2023, where you mention, again, the ability to be able to go outside and to be able to bring in guys from around the country. But what they're doing right now with the Louisiana guys, they've really struck gold recently with a lot of Louisiana players.
You've got to do it. You don't have a choice. Because not only are, and it's really, we still say Power 5, but we know better. There's Power 2, there's SEC and Big Ten. But every other FBS program of any note is spending the money. When you hear these stories about, you know, Texas Tech and SMU are going to have guys making 36 grand a year up front coming in, and they're not on your level. That tells you how much money you've got to be generating through these collectives, NIL deals, to keep these players happy. LSU, because they were in the midst of a coaching change, and everybody was at least somewhat surprised about how this was going to go when those floodgates opened after the Supreme Court decision, they've caught up. And they're continuing to get their act together there because they do have a collective now in place. The state legislature helping out so that you can go and be more aggressive in that area. LSU may have been behind for a little while, but that's not a concern any longer. And the combination of being an attractive big-time program in the SEC with the money that the players will get through NIL, that's coming together nicely. LSU's going to be just fine.
And let's throw in Brian Kelly as well, who I think is going to, just to get his reputation, will again help LSU in terms of recruiting as well. All right, let's switch gears. Wait, before we do this, Florida State in the Dome, your thoughts on that game?
I think it's a game LSU should win, but this is a desperate team under Mike Norvell who needs to prove himself, 3rd year as a head coach. This program needs to start making progress, not just because of their longtime standard, but because of the moving pieces of conference realignment. Florida State needs to be Florida State again, or they could get left behind, and it needs to start now. But they do have some issues there. They do have an experienced quarterback, and they've recruited well in some areas. But I think we're already hearing about injury issues and a lack of depth on their offensive line. I think this is a game where LSU is going to win in the trenches, and they might win comfortably. My biggest concern, the biggest question mark, is they lost the best kicker in the country to the next level, and Nathan Dilbert's going to be the place kicker. If there are close games to come, can you rely on him? Can he go 3 for 3 and make sure that you're not leaving points on the field? We'll have to see that, but I think LSU brings the more talented roster, and I think that if I'm right and Jaden Daniels is the starter, you'll see him look a lot more like he did early in his career. By the way, 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions as a true freshman. He has started since his true freshman year when he had more talent available, when that program under Herm Edwards was more stable. It's not now. And people have said to me, well, he's known not to be as accurate as your other options, always bringing up Miles Brennan by comparison. Jaden Daniels' career completion percentage, 62.4%. Miles Brennan in a lot fewer snaps, 60.7. So that's overblown. I think Daniels will be ready to play, and they make a statement win and win by a couple scores and allow people to realize LSU is not at the bottom of the barrel where they're being picked as a 7-win team. I think they're better than that by a win or 2 at least.
8-4, 9-3 would be great. Would be a great first
with that
season.
Schedule, absolutely.
Come on, I mean, no doubt about it. Tulane, on the other hand, Tulane, same thing. Again, they're looking for a kicker, like they always are, right? That's a big part of what they're doing. But they went into the transfer portal, and based on, again, what we've been hearing out of camp, it looks like it's paying off. And we'll find out against UMass and, of course, as they get started. But they've augmented their talent, again, through that transfer portal, which they really needed.
And they're able to get speed through the portal. They're able to get guys who can match up in the secondary in a pretty pass-happy league overall still until those power programs will end up moving on to the Big 12. That's not going to change. And they've been able to get transfers to come back home at the skill positions on offense to just supplement what they already have. Biggest questions, though, for them by far, it's not a quarterback, Michael Pratt, other than to keep him from getting beaten up. So can you have enough stability in the offensive line? But the biggest issue Tulane had last year offensively, reliability of the receivers. They would drop so many passes, those mistakes that would kill drives. And when you're in those games where you have to match scores for a while, especially if you're having to play from behind and hang in there, you can't afford that. They have probably, when they take the field against other teams, their offense will have a player that's more talented than any other player that a team's going to see all season long in Tajay Spears. And to have him back fully 100% like he was late last season, previous year with the knee injury, and he's racking up over 200 yards against Memphis when they know he's getting the ball every which way, runner, receiver, can even be used in the kick return game. Spears can be such a difference maker. It just comes down to the other weapons and the speed they have at the receiving core in particular. Catch the ball. If you can do that, they'll be back in a situation where they're competing to be a bowl team again. I'm not ready to go from 2 wins beyond 6, but they're being picked to win about 6 games. The schedule sets up pretty well for them to do it. And if they can just do that and get back to a bowl game, that could be a springboard to a brighter future.
How about their offensive line? That's always been an issue. Again, there's been a changeover in terms of coaching. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, they've had the stability with Haynesworth, a really good center. But again, they're just trying to find the right combinations, and what we talked about with LSU. Depth is always an issue. If you start getting banged up there, how good is Tulane going to be in that area? You need a little bit of good luck. But I do know this. If Pratt believes in his receivers, and having another new offensive coordinator, and he was known for getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quick. If that can start to work, because Tulane has the type of speed to threaten defenses, so there will be some gimmies there between throwing to your backs like Spears and the short passing game. Tyrick James is a very talented tight end. Catch the ball. They should be able to cover up issues as they prop up on the offensive line. But it is also incumbent upon Pratt to get the ball out of your hands a little faster. You can't catch the ball for him, but if he keeps holding it like he did last year, he's not going to last the season.
Defensively, how good can they be?
I think they can be pretty good. You know, just talking to people who feel good about how they've recruited on the defensive line. They lost 2 NFL caliber in Sample and Johnson, real pass rushers going into last year. Those guys are in the pros now. They've recruited there, and they're a little better there. So that'll help them a little bit. I just like their overall team speed and the fact that Nick Anderson leads a really good linebacker core. So they have the ability to hold up. Again, it's much more of a concern about the offense holding up its end of the bargain, because when you're blowing drives quickly and you're not consistently moving the ball, your defense is on the field too long. So that really is going to go hand in hand as far as how good that defense looks come November versus it looking, I think, pretty good to start the season.
6-7 wins for the Greenies?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable deal. You hope they're not fighting for that 6th win at the end, but I would be very surprised if they don't win at least 5.
Right.
But I say they'll win 6.
They got to win at least 6. Again, we got to really rebound. Look, the schedule really hurt them last year. That was a bear of a schedule.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, the expectations to try to be able to compete at that level for Tulane is just not happening.
It's a massive springboard for them if you think Tulane has any future in big boy football, because their conference gets weaker. So if they continue to move forward and they have confidence again after this year and get to a bowl, suddenly they can start thinking really about competing at the top of the league.
Right.
So
they should.
It could be a blip on the radar. They should, considering the teams they're bringing in.
The teams that are leaving, come on.
So, and if they can do that and do that consistently, because they're such a good academic institution in a decent-sized market with a fertile recruiting ground, Tulane could get into a Big 12 if an ACC or a Pac-12 are still in existence, in particular because the academics are so attractive, and bring in a new market to those leagues. This is their last chance.
I agree.
If Tulane's not an established, good, winning program by 2030 at the very latest, then they might as well forget about it. They'll always be on a lower tier.
No, I agree. As we finish up, the rumors are starting to crop up again. They're probably coming from Brooklyn, but KD to the Pels. People emailing me frantically about, again, they're going to give up Brandon Ingram, they give up Herb Jones. I don't think they're giving up either, and I don't think they're going to get involved in this. I've said all along that I don't think you have to give up the farm for Kevin Durant. I think if you win this year and you're a consistent winner and it looks like you're taking the next step next year, those type of players will want to come to New Orleans and play, and you won't be giving up your team to bring them in. What are your thoughts on the rumors, or is there really a chance that he's coming to New Orleans? What do you think Griff's going to do?
It's a New York rumor coming out of the New York market, because the Nets are in such a bind now. Durant's going to make it impossible for him to be forced to stick around. And now he's expanding his horizons, I think, and saying, okay, it may be a market I don't want to play at, but they're going to be good. I would go there. That's what that seems to indicate to me. Whether it's actually going to happen, well, I will say this. If you're the Pelicans, and you just sit around and continue to be willing to at least answer the phone, maybe the price comes into your range from a desperate seller to finally get something where you go, hey, maybe we can't pass this up. Now, I think it is possible, if it gets that desperate, that you can keep Ingram and obviously Zion, and still with your younger players and the extra picks you have, you could wheel and deal something, because the Nets are looking at a complete teardown, and they, because of other trades, including the James Harden deal with Houston, they don't have their future picks, so tanking really isn't an option for them. So a team that's got enough picks to play the game with them, and Durant won't raise hell going there, if you're New Orleans, you got to at least keep the ear open until he finally is settled where he's going to be.
Here's my issue, okay? He wanted a certain coaching staff, he got it. He wanted Steve Nash, he got it. He wanted Kyrie Irving, he got it. Everything that's going on with the Nets right now that's blowing up, he is responsible for it. I mean, he's getting older. He's still one of the top players in the NBA. I'm not saying that. But do you really want that here right now when you have the culture you have? And again, it's hard to say that when you're talking about a guy that still could be a top 3 player in the world, right? But is that something that the Pels want to do right now in possibly breaking up with the position they're in right now with a young and upcoming coach and, of course, the situation with the Pels, and we got about 30 seconds.
We don't get paid to make those decisions, but if Willie Green says we'd be better doing this and he wants it, and folks in the building who have played professionally before, like your GM and Trajan Langdon, Swin Cash, Teresa Witherspoon, if they're all saying they know the guy, they know the situation, and it can be handled here, and you can go and be a team in the NBA Finals, they just might do it if the deal is right. I'm not saying they should. That's not our decision, though. Those folks need to make that call.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Now, again, Ms. Benson has said she's willing to go over the luxury tax threshold if they're vying for a championship. A chip like that. You are
definitely vying for a championship.
That means you're going over the luxury tax threshold. So we'll see where the rubber hits the road on that. Jude, as always, thanks so much. Tell the folks one more time about the shows and how they can follow you on social media.
All Access on 106.1 FM, 6 o'clock in the evenings after Eric Asher's show. Again, 106.1 FM Nash Icon. Check us out at CrescentCitySports.com for all of our coverage of local sports. And coming up, we're getting close. Basketball season's not that far away. On ESPN Plus and 106.1, I'll be broadcasting all of UNO basketball.
Beautiful. Thanks for being with us tonight, as always. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there are a lot of ways to be able to catch our rebroadcast. So many rebroadcasts. Again, you can has a QR code up on your screen. Just click on the QR code. It'll take you right to the WLAE-TV YouTube page or to my website, where, again, you can catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports. You can catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM. That is 4 to 6 weekdays. Again, you can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, the TuneIn Radio app, the Anchor app is our podcast, and of course, as always, you can check us out on any of your applications out there that carry our program. Also, want to thank our production staff here at WLAE-TV. Again, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Raffia, Alex Chacon, and William Hill. Also want to thank our underwriters who again underwrite this program. Please support those underwriters. For Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.